Friday morning to you. This is Tampa Home Talk, and I'm your host, Katrina Madewell. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're glad you're here, and it has been quite a little bit of a process, right, to get this 8 o'clock hour going, but it's been so fun.
It's Good Friday? Did you just say it was Good Friday?
No. We've had a great time actually getting, I didn't tell you this, but Wednesday, because we just added this hour last week, we had someone pop into the mortgage firm's mixer, and last week's show we did was all about the deadline to file homestead exemption. So we covered that in the 8 o'clock hour. There were some people that called us and thanked us because they actually would have missed it if we didn't cover it. And one of the gals that came said that she started listening because of the 8 o'clock hour and followed it all the way through to 10 o'clock. So Thank you, Cindy.
And I heard that Homestead actually got 3% of the write-in vote for City of Tampa mayor.
So,
because of our show.
Really?
Yeah,
That's
people were
awesome.
so excited about Homestead, they didn't know what forms to file, so they just voted for it.
Are you serious, Leo?
Dead
You're
serious.
always bringing something.
Check it. I can pull it up. Tampa Bay Times.
That's awesome. So who's in the lead? Do you know?
Well, there's a runoff. Mm-hmm. So it's Jane versus David in the runoff in April.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess Topher didn't make it, huh? I knew him from a long time ago.
We don't talk politics, but you had candidate that spent a record number of money to advertise, and I'm not surprised they made it to the finals.
Well, it'll be what it will be. That's the way it goes. That's the point of being an elected official, right? Which our special guest today would know all about that. Welcome back to our show, Mr. Mike Fasano.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
And your sidekick, Mr. Tim Coette. Welcome to the show. We're glad to have you guys back.
Good to be here.
And so today, I'm really honored that we're talking about this topic because originally, how long did we have you on? Was it like a year or two, maybe year and a half ago?
No.
6 months, maybe?
6 months.
I lose track of time, so sometimes
So do I.
You can pull up the videos. Just see the one that says tax collector in the title.
6 months ago, originally, when we reached out to you guys, this was the show and the topic that we wanted to cover was the PACE program. And now, after following you on social media, after following some of the stories, and after watching some of the things associated with the PACE program, which we're going to cover today, I understand why you didn't want to talk about that 6 months ago. But I'm so glad that you're here today to talk about it. I think it will do a lot of good for the person listening and maybe somebody even considering the PACE program. So we want to first talk about what the PACE program is, and then we're going to give you kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly, what to expect around this PACE program. Before we do,
yes,
jump in and can you tell the person listening, Mike, a little bit about your background?
Sure.
Where you started, how you got here?
Absolutely. I live in Pasco County, have lived in Pasco County now for about 48 years. Came down from New York with my mom and dad and my 4 siblings. I'm the youngest of 5. So I've been here ever since. Pretty much grew up in Pasco County, got involved in politics. In fact, even prior to that, my dad passed away when I was 65, so I dropped out of school when I was 15 years old, got my GED when I was 28, and had to go to work and support my mom and myself. Got involved in politics, ran for office, lost, ran for office, lost, ran for office, and won.
That sounds like Nixon.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, please don't compare me with Richard Nixon. I appreciate that, Leo. But anyway.
We're going to have a lot of fun on this show.
Yes, indeed. So ran for office, finally got elected to the Florida legislature back in 1994. Served there, became majority leader, was termed out because of the constitutional amendment that was adopted, which is a good thing. Term limits are good.
Yes.
Served in the Florida Senate for 10 years. Mike Olson, who was the tax collector for Pasco County for over 30 years, passed away, unfortunately. I was appointed to this constitutional office then by Governor Rick Scott and have been reelected twice since then.
Which says a lot about you and what the people of Pasco think of you.
Well, thank you very much. I love. Not only do I love politics, I love public service. One of the things that we strive on, not only when I was a legislator, but also as the tax collector, of course, is constituent service, customer service, and that's key.
I would say you definitely deliver that because I watch a lot of your posts that you follow. I see many of the things that you do, and I would say you do that at a high level, higher than I probably have ever seen any politician do that.
Well, thank you very much, and that's what it's all about, public service, and if we can provide
somehow that gets lost, right? A along
unfortunately,
the way?
it does. Unfortunately, I've seen many times those who go to Tallahassee, those who go to Washington, tend to forget who and why, who got them there and why they got there, and they get so involved in that. In the beltway, if you will,
right.
Whether it be the Tallahassee beltway or the Washington beltway, and lose total contact and contact with those at home and understand why they're there.
I think it would be easy to become a little bit jaded, right, in that process. Like you're so engulfed around how that happens, and like you say, you forget how
Yes,
you got there.
certainly.
So one more question, just because it's a super curious question.
Certainly.
You said you ran a couple times,
Yes.
didn't get elected. Third time you did.
Yes.
Talk about that process, 'cause I'm just really
Sure.
curious to know from your perspective. That's got to be horrible, like to lose and then just to get the courage to do it again.
Yeah.
Like, talk about that.
Well, I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess. I don't know if it's courage. I think it's just a glutton for punishment. And
Fair enough.
I got involved. I was a big Reagan fan, still am. He's kind of one of my heroes.
He was one of the best presidents we've ever had.
Yeah, and so I got involved in his campaign when he ran for office, walked precincts, knocked doors, held signs.
So you started in the field, like
Oh,
on the
yeah, when I
streets.
was 16, 17 years old, driving people to the polls, things like that. And then as I got older, I became Republican State Committee man for Pasco County, which is a political position, president of the West Pasco Republican Club. From there, I moved on to helping candidates working in campaigns. And then I thought, let me give it a shot. I ran for office in 1992.
What made you want to do that?
Just wanted to
Just
serve
felt
in
like
some
to
other
do it? Yeah.
some way. Unfortunately, I won the primary, lost the general election to a county commissioner. I ran for county commissioner back then, first time. Lost that, ran for the legislature, and lost that in a primary. And I thought my political career was over as far as running for office. God works in mysterious ways, as we all know, opened up another opportunity for me. So I figured I'd throw my hat in the ring, give it one more shot back in 94. And won the Florida legislature and have served there for 19 years, like I said, in the Florida House, Florida Senate.
And one of the things I remember from the prior shows you did, which is just really amazing, I want to talk about that, was you were involved in the extra $25,000 exemption and the portability, which is huge.
Which is very big. And a lot of people, and it's not their fault, are not aware of portability.
So many people are not.
Yeah,
I
and
would
this
say out of
is-
10 people I talk to, 9
Yeah.
have no idea what I'm talking about.
And you've been helpful in getting the word out on your show here, the importance of portability, how it can help those who live in a home that they've lived in for many years. And that home has increased in value. And maybe the kids are gone. And they don't need this 5-bedroom home. They want to downsize. But they're concerned because when they move to another home, they're going to have a taxable
Huge
assessment
bill.
each year, no different than when they're living in now, because they don't enjoy the Save Our Homes when they move.
Right.
But they can bring that Save Our Homes with them now with the portability.
That was like the best thing that
people
we ever put in place.
Exactly. There were 2 great things. Well, actually, there were 3 great things in that constitutional amendment. Charlie Crist, who was governor at the time, asked me to co-chair it statewide. It won by over 60%. It was a January election, a constitutional amendment that was on the ballot, special election. And 3 things were in there. 1, it increased the homestead exemption from $25,000 to $50,000. Now, remember, for those who are listening, the $50,000 only counts towards all non-school
Right.
assessments.
Which we don't want to take any money away from the schools.
Well,
so
that's
I'm glad
the
about
only
that.
way you could get the school personnel, the school people involved and support the concept.
And I think everybody agrees with
Absolutely.
that generally.
They're underfunded to begin with, so we got to make sure we don't take any more money away from them. So there was that one. There was also the portability, being able to take your Save Your Homes with you and within the first 2 years, take that with you to the next home that you purchase if you do it within 2 years. And thirdly, which a
So
lot...
to give you an example what that
Please.
looks like really quick, Mike,
Yeah.
if you have just the average price home, which is around the $250, $275 price, you've been in your home for 15, 20 years, it's possible for you to have a tax bill as low as $700, $800, $900. And then if you move, you're looking at a tax bill of maybe $3,000.
For a smaller
Which
home.
is what will be for the next person.
Yes.
But you can actually take that savings with you to your next home,
Right.
which is what Mr. Pisano is talking about. And the third thing,
Third thing, real quickly, for mobile home owners, those who live especially in mobile home parks, we increased the tangible exemption to $25,000. So those mobile home owners that have, carports And anything else that's not in the mobile home itself used to be it used to be looked at as a tangible property. That's all exempt now. So most of them, if not all of them, don't bother to have to file a tangible tax anymore.
That's awesome. You're listening to Tampa Home Talk. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell, here with Mike Fasano, Leo, and Tim. We will be back right after this break. Stick around. Don't go anywhere. We're going to get into the Down and Dirty, the PACE program, right when we come back. Well, welcome back. You're listening to Tampa Home Talk. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell, hanging out with Leo Cannyn, Mr. Mike Fasano, and Mr. Tim Coette. Thank you for sharing a little bit of your backstory, Mike, in the earlier segment. We appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And we're talking all about the PACE program today. Tim, thank you for getting Mike on for another hour, because clearly we're going to need that.
We're going to need it.
He owes me lunch today, just so you know.
You asked for his background. That's an easy hour right there.
I know. You could be right about that. All right. So let's jump into the PASCO program. And Mike, please correct me along the way, because I've read up on this. So if anything's wrong, Tim, if I speak out of turn, please jump in and correct me.
Absolutely.
But the PACE program, is this not a program that's available everywhere, right? Like,
it's only available where counties have adopted it. Although it was passed legislatively many years ago, back in 2010, it allows counties to adopt, if you will, an ordinance, a resolution that they will allow it to happen in their county.
And the purpose for the counties to allow that would be?
Well, one is they're being lobbied by the PACE providers to kind of convince the county commission, their staff, that there is an option for those who may need a new roof, who need an air conditioner, who may need some mitigation windows to their homes, but cannot afford it, don't have any other option to get those dollars. So it sounds like, wow, this is a great program.
Right. That was my take on it when I first read about it.
Right.
This is a great program.
So it's for residential programs, for residential homes. And it's truly meant for like a clean energy.
Yes, they created it as
renewable.
and Tim always reminds me of that. In fact, it's of course it's called the Property Assessed Clean Energy Program, and people think, wow, you think of solar systems,
Right.
You think of solar systems. However, it's expanded. How it happened, I don't know, but it's expanded now to roofs, air conditioners, and to windows, if you will. And so, my opinion, it's nice for the solar systems, but I like the idea that people can get a new roof if they need it because they cannot find any other type of financing. My concern is, does the customer understand what they're getting themselves into?
Right.
And is everything being explained to them by the contractor? And sadly, in some cases, it's not. Right.
So that's how this whole topic came to be. That's why we wanted to cover it several months ago. Is I had a customer, one of our past clients, which I shared with you, almost all of our business is repeat, referred, and past clients. And they had someone approach them about putting new windows in their home using the PACE program. And I wasn't familiar with it. So, of course, I looked it up to see what it was because they're asking my opinion. And I'm not going to give you my opinion if I don't know anything about it. So I start reading about it.
You should never be in politics.
You're on radio.
Yeah,
that's
right.
what we do.
So I'm like, well, let me read about this. And then I realized that it was available on Pasco. And then I thought, wow, this will be an amazing program to cover. And who best to talk about it than Mike Fasano? And
Yeah.
you're like, oh, no, I'm not covering the PACE program.
Well, I didn't want to cover it back then,
Yeah.
only because we wanted to make certain we got all of the information. We
Right.
wanted to be sure we understood what was happening here in Pasco. And as time went on and took Tim and his department pretty much oversee what's going on, we've hired a customer advocate that works under Tim. She has been outstanding. She reaches out to every PACE customer that signs a disclosure. We now have the customer must sign a disclosure, and that disclosure has to be given to us before anything else can happen.
So when they're filing the permits to do the work, that's when you're seeing that?
They
or
cannot
not
even
yet?
do.
Can't get that
Go
far,
ahead, Tim.
Right?
Yeah, they can't even get that far. So this is, Florida's got that 3-day right of rescission where when you enter
Right.
a financing agreement, you have 3 days to consider what you're doing.
Turn him up.
We require the customer to be able to go ahead and the contractor and the PACE provider to fill out a disclosure that's going to protect that consumer, and we call them. And what that disclosure does is run down exactly what the PACE program is. So we call them during that 3 days to make sure that if they're not interested anymore because of the interest rate or because of what it does to their taxes, then they have the time to back out.
Now that is an example of excellent customer service.
Unfortunately,
That,
though,
right there.
unfortunately,
You were off mic, Katrina.
Keep going. Go ahead. Pat's talking to me off the air, and you folks listening can't hear that yet.
Many of those individuals had already signed up before we were able to begin this disclosure. So for some, it's too late to get the facts, to understand it, to know exactly what they've gotten themselves into. And that's where our customer advocate, Samantha's getting a lot of calls from these people now saying, hey, I just got my tax bill. Why has my tax bill doubled, tripled, in some cases quadrupled? Well, that's because Mrs. Jones, Mr. Smith, you have a PACE loan, you have a solar system, you have a new roof, you have new windows. That is now going to be on your tax bill every year for the next 20, 30, 10 years.
So before we scare the person listening, get into those details, because we're going to talk about those a lot in depth and some of those stories, let's talk about what that PACE program is.
Yes.
So it's basically... it's not free to participate, right?
No,
That's one of the
not.
main things you need to know. There's interest associated with it, correct?
Yes.
And the reason why the people will do it very easily with the equity position is because
they're guaranteed.
Yeah,
that's right. These are investors. We've met some of these investors. Whether they be individual investors or corporations. These are investors who sell bonds, take that money, and they loan it back out. And they're loaning these dollars to individuals, homeowners, if you will, some even commercial, and they get an interest rate back on that money because that money is one thing guaranteed. See, unlike a loan that you may take from a bank or a mortgage company, nothing's guaranteed.
Right.
But when it's on your tax bill, when something is put on your tax bill,
it's getting paid.
It's getting paid because you cannot take your tax bill and just say, I'm only paying this part or that part.
It's like saying I don't want to pay my CDD fee.
Right, exactly.
Not happening.
And CDDs, in fact, like it as well because
Yes.
it's on the tax bill. But statutorily, it has to be on the tax bill. We must put it on the tax bill. If it's on the tax roll, we have to put it on the tax bill. And that's why the PACE providers did an excellent job in promoting this both at the federal level and the state level, where they sold it as being part of someone's tax notice. So when it's on the tax notice, it has to be paid guaranteed.
Are the interest rates regulated on these programs?
No, it's really the lowest I've ever seen, just so people understand, is about 7.9. And so you're in the ballpark of 7.9 to all the way up to 9.5. So it's really regulated by the competition between the different entities that are in Pasco that are providing PACE. There's 4 of them. 3 right now, and we can get into that later, how all that went down. But
so there's only 4 people that are allowed to offer the program.
4 PACE financing corporations that actually offer it.
In Pasco, there's only 3.
There's only 3 right now.
We asked the county commission to dismiss one of them. We'll say dismissal as a nice word because
they felt like it was abused, right? And
they didn't want to sign. They didn't want to sign our new contract requiring them to use the disclosure. Now, you think about it for a second.
There's a reason why.
Yes. Why would they, and this is what I said to the county commissioners, and by the way, our 5 county commissioners are outstanding here in Pasco County. They are just so pro-consumer, and they stepped right up to the plate and said, no, we support the tax collector, the property appraiser, in requiring this disclosure. And I said to the commissioners, why would any PACE provider be concerned about these simple questions and answers and this disclosure that we're asking the customer and the contractor? Huh?
What are some of those questions?
Well, I'll read them here. What is the residential PACE program? And we answer that. What is the PACE program free for me? Is the PACE program free for me? We answer that. Absolutely, it's not free. How do I qualify for financing? We answer that in this disclosure. How do I repay the PACE funds? We answer that. Of course, it's going to be on your annual tax notice. Do I pay interest for the financing? Absolutely, you're going to pay interest. Are there other costs? And yes, there are other costs. There's upfront costs. In fact, the lender, if you will, let's say if you get a PACE loan and you pay it back within the first year, you're still going to be charged interest. You're still going to get hit for that first year of interest. Are there other costs?
So it's not simple interest. They're collecting the interest for the whole thing?
That's correct. Not for the whole, but for that year. For that year. So for the first year, because when you get your statement, you're going to see some additional charges. You're being assessed the interest for that first year, whether you want it or not. You're going to be hit for that first year. Are there other costs? Of course there are other costs. What happens if I'm not happy with the improvements? We talk about that. We also talk about for energy improvements, does the contractor have to give me an energy audit? This is very interesting. The law does not require an energy audit.
And isn't that the purpose of the program?
Absolutely.
Sure is.
Initially, it was
It's a
supposed to be-
mitigation program. That's what it was designed for, to mitigate your home with a solar system, with new windows, with a new roof, if you will. And the problem is that you put a whole new solar system on top, no one can tell you whether you're going to save money if not. You sell a senior citizen who's 80 years old a solar system.
That's the thing.
Yes.
Like, that's the thing. Like,
Yeah.
the solar system might be great,
But they're not going
right,
to benefit.
for somebody like me or you or Leo. And I've sold these homes,
Right.
right? And I remember thinking to myself, gosh, why would they spend all the money for this solar system?
Right.
You know, not that any number of years is guaranteed for anyone, but that's the little things that you're talking about.
People don't also realize, like, for instance, what happens if I have trouble making the increased tax payment?
Oh, that is an excellent
This
question.
is-
We're
this
going
is-
to cover that.
Sure,
When we come
okay.
back
20
right
seconds.
after the break. You're listening to Tampa Home Talk. We are talking all about the PACE program today with Mr. Mike Fasano. Stick around because this is a great program to help cover some of those expenses you might not be able to afford. But we're going to tell you the things that you need to be totally aware of before you ever sign into this program. We'll be back in just a minute.
Hi, this is Mike Fasano, and you're listening to Tampa Home Talk.
Yes, you are, and welcome back. We are talking all about the PACE program. We're glad you're here. We're talking about some of the things that you need to know, and to go back into those questions that we left off on right before the break. The PACE program allows you to make some of these energy or otherwise
Yes.
improvements on your home.
Yes.
So can we give a quick rundown on what's allowed or what could be included in the PACE program?
I'm going to let Tim.
Sure,
Windows.
absolutely. So really, they can justify almost anything that's going to create an energy savings for you. So that's a hot water heater, an air conditioner, windows, roof, solar panels. Those are the most common ones that we typically see. Things that are off limits, you can't do flooring, you can't do,
fence.
remodels, you can't do a fence, that type of stuff.
Insulation would be in that?
Insulation is
Perhaps? Okay.
typically when they sell a roof, they'll sell you the blown-in insulation or the laid-in insulation as well.
They may replace it when they do an air conditioner.
Yeah, they'll try to
Okay.
do the whole thing. Duct work does work in there as well because it's part of the air
Okay.
conditioner. So the best way to think about it is anything that creates some kind of energy savings, even if it's very minute for
Well,
you.
flooring does that.
All right.
Well, you're going to argue at any point like that because you're
Well,
an
I have
engineer.
to fill out an 8-page form about energy efficiency on every single house when you apply for a permit. Flooring has R value, and wall covering has R value.
I'd
and
love
wall-
to know how flooring creates energy savings.
Go ahead. You're the
Easily.
engineer.
So let's just say you live in a
Excuse me,
condo.
Leo, it's my hour.
Here's a quick example. Let's just say a quick example. Let's say you're going to lay tile on a second floor, and you put cork down to dampen the sound. That's going to act as an insulation as well and give you an R value.
Wow.
He's like an attorney with an engine,
That's
like
great,
the
though.
engineer
That'd be the last
background.
thing I
Great.
think of.
Good for you,
Well, I've never
Leo.
seen a floor
Good
come
job.
through, but you may have just given the PACE people some more ideas.
No, I can definitely. Energy efficiency is all around us.
All right, so I know we talked about in the earlier segment, but just to recap, in
Certainly.
case someone's hopping in the car listening so far, right now in Pasco, there's only 3 providers that
There's
are
3
allowed to
PACE
provide
providers.
the
That's correct.
financing, right, for
That
these
is correct.
things?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in terms of the people doing the work, can that be anyone?
Well, they have to be associated with that PACE provider. The problem we're having is that these PACE providers, unfortunately, are pretty much taking in any contractor that wants to sell their product or sell their loan.
So that's what I was going to ask you. What does
Yeah.
that mean to be associated with them? Like, what's the requirement for that?
They're very, pretty much they tell you they go through a process to be an approved contractor with, one of the PACE program providers. There are certain requirements they do have to go through. I'm not completely convinced that they're all going through that very strenuously. That's
They're
not
not.
done by law. And so none of that is regulated by law, and that's part of the problem here with those
And
contractors.
I would encourage anyone and everyone who's looking to possibly do this or deal with a contractor. If you don't know this contractor, especially if it's a contractor, and I'll speak on behalf of our our Pasco residents. We know some very good, ethical, legitimate contractors in Pasco County that have been here for umpteen years. I don't want to name them, but there
Right.
are many. You know them. Leo, Tim knows them. when all of a sudden someone comes knocking at your door,
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
and
Yes.
you find out they're from Clearwater or St. Pete or Tampa, be suspect right away.
Right.
And they start to tell you that, Mrs. Jones, I think I was looking at your roof and you might need a new roof.
Not that
Plus-
that would make them bad based on where they're from, but
Be a little
here's
bit
the thing.
concerned.
If they're door knocking on your door,
Yes.
there's probably a reason for
Yes.
that. Where somebody like me, not that I wouldn't knock on someone's door and say hello, but honestly, I don't have the capacity or the time
Right.
to do it.
Right. And if they're from Clearwater or St. Pete, there's a reason why they're in Pasco pushing the PACE loan, because Pinellas won't adopt
They don't
the
allow
PACE.
it.
They don't adopt PACE.
Do you know if Hillsborough allows it?
Hillsborough doesn't
Okay.
allow it. But I mean, we've seen story after story. Mark Douglas, who's now retired by WF out of WFLA Channel 8, has done a phenomenal job in bringing the attention of these unscrupulous, unethical contractors that come out of Pasco County. I'm not going to name them,
Right.
but they're out of Pasco County. That's why I would encourage people. We have legitimate, ethical, good contractors in Pasco County that do offer the PACE.
And they're doing work on their home, so they get to pick. It's still your home.
Absolutely.
And you can choose. Don't believe that they're the only one to choose from. First of all, that is associated with a PACE lender. Many of them, if not all of them, are associated in some way. And what's great about it, I hear from contractors here in Pasco who are very unhappy with what's going on in PACE because it gives them a bad name as well, because they offer it, but they offer it as a last resort, totally last resort.
So let's talk about that. Can we go back just a little bit? I get what you're saying about a last resort, but I'm curious why you think that should be a last resort, and we'll talk about some of the biggest challenges
Sure.
with it. But if it's, let's just say in a perfect world, which we know this is not happening, this is why we're covering it. But if it's a perfect world and someone's getting the PACE program, what's the good things about it? Like what's good about it? The fact that they don't have to have much money into it, or like where's the good?
Let me know when you want to start.
Okay, so there's no answers.
Well,
Maybe if I may,
Yeah.
one of the things where we've seen this work for people is when people are not able to qualify because they have credit problems, but
Okay.
they have good income, and so they are responsible enough to know, okay, I can't get a home equity loan for a new roof, but I can finance it. I got to swallow the bitter pill of 8.5% because a home equity line of credit is typically less than that. But I have the income to cover it, and I understand that it's going to be on my tax bill for the next 20 years.
and
Are
the
those
key is
fixed
what Tim
rates?
just said, is to understand it.
Right.
That's the key. And contractors are not being upfront.
Correct.
Some contractors are not being
Many
upfront.
that you've seen, because you
are
get
not
the
being,
after story.
That's right. Are not honest with with the customer. Now the PACE providers will tell you, "Oh, we disclose everything. We provide all kinds of information." Well, a lot of it is done through email. A lot of it is done by internet. A lot of it is done where you never see a PACE provider come to your home, which they should. Someone needs to come to the home after the contractor has signed the contract, come out there, sit down with Mrs. Jones, sit down with Mr. Smith and say, I want to explain everything in detail of what's going to happen now. Do you understand it? And that's why we require this disclosure now. And that's why, although we're not required, and no other tax collector does it in the state, we have a customer advocate that calls that individual to follow up to make sure they do understand it.
So I've never seen these contracts. If I did see them, surely I could break it down and I would understand it in a second how that's going down. But help me and the person listening understand.
It's not a paper contract.
Okay. So,
an electronic
give me the
contract.
logistics of it. So just give me an example, Tim or Mike.
Sure, yeah.
Let's say it's a roof, right? And in your scenario, and I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute and just say the person has horrible credit. They've got a ton of medical bills. They got in a horrible car accident. They've got great income, but this has kind of ruined their
They
life.
don't have great income, though. That's the problem.
But let's say they did,
Okay.
right? So in
Sure.
your example that you said they have bad credit, but they've got the income, right?
Yep.
And they don't, by the way,
You don't
it's
qualify.
not based on income.
That's correct, and
That's
it needs to
correct.
be
so
changed.
that's the caveat you need to know. But let's just say for a moment, and we'll talk about that's where we're
Sure.
going to go, because I know that's what you want to cover. Let's say for a moment they do have the income to cover it, but for whatever reason they don't have the cash and they've got terrible credit, so like they've got to have 10 or 20 grand for a roof. In this particular scenario, how does it work? I've got $20,000 for a roof. Is that what's being financed, and is it at what percent and over what period of time?
Yeah, and so that is what's going to end up being financed. And typically what we see with these interest rates, it almost works like an amortization schedule. So their second page on a PACE contract shows you what your bill is going to be over a period of time. And it literally will take a $20,000 roof and amortize it to be about 40 grand.
So here's the thing. That's no different than a mortgage payment or anything, right?
Correct.
So the higher the rate, the bigger the number, the more interest
Absolutely.
you're going to pay.
And the
That's
longer
just finance.
the longer the time span, the longer the loan, the more you're
The
going
more
to
you'll pay, right.
And, and Katrina, you hit it right on the head, and that is that the bottom line is it is like making a mortgage payment
Yes.
for the rest of your life or for the rest of the time you own that home.
Look
And
at
there-
the truth in lending or the AM schedule. It'll scare
there's
that
no-
you know what.
And the killer is with this, there is no truth in lending. There is there's no
remember,
disclosure like you have. And you know how many
Yeah.
times you've gone to a closing. It takes an hour.
Yeah.
It takes more than that to have to go through all the documents, paperwork. Heck, when you go buy a car, it's almost similar. When you have a PACE loan, here,
5-minute thing.
yes, and it's not even done with where they come out and have you. They come out with a laptop or
Lot of
with
digital signatures.
and it's a digital signature.
I remember a client one time in a closing, we got to the amortization schedule, which is how they break down all the numbers. And she was looking at the total over the lifetime of the loan she would repay. And she went,
Yeah.
she was looking at it, and
Yeah.
the title agent looks at her and she goes, "Don't do that to yourself." Now, I will tell you the story.
We want this closing to go through. Don't do that to yourself.
Sign
Well,
right
the
here.
story of this customer.
They don't have a choice
here's
at that point. They have to sign.
Here's the
Exactly.
flip side. Like, I would never let anybody sign something that didn't make sense, right? But I think they paid at the time $100 and some odd $1,000. This was almost 15 years ago. I'm still in touch with them. Their house is just about paid off. That same house is probably worth $300.
Sure.
True.
So they
That is true.
doubled their value,
Right.
even though that was the interest rate, and it was a 15-year loan, which you're going to pay substantially less.
Which, Katrina, is a great contrast because now we're looking at a PACE program. When you put that money out, that's a depreciating asset. You hate to say it that way, but it really is because you're eventually going to have to replace that roof again or the AC again.
So what's the term on these?
Oh, they
How
could range.
long?
They could range from 10 years to 30 years.
So that it's at their discretion? Or?
well, it's not in law.
Yeah, the preference is, and I say preference because we found some that have extended beyond that. The PACE providers don't like to because it's in their own interest. They don't like to go beyond the guarantee on that product. So sometimes,
does that mean? Break that down.
a roof usually get a 20-year warranty on a roof. They don't want to go beyond 20 years. They will if the person can't qualify or they can't make the payment or they tell them they can't make the payment. Maybe on an AC unit it's 10 years. Maybe on a hot water heater it's a year or two or 10 years or whatever it is. They don't like going beyond the warranty.
But they do.
But they do. We've seen
So
it a couple
by
times
the
where they
time
do.
you've paid that off, if you've gotten to that point,
Time for a new one.
guess what? It's
Yeah.
time for a new roof.
So now you're
it's
starting
time
the
for a new
cycle
hot
all over
water heater,
again.
new air conditioner.
Yeah. But here's the thing. That's really, this whole premise is about an education piece, right? So if we can educate people how money works, how amortization schedules work,
Certainly.
and how it makes sense, like if you know you're going to need a new roof, start saving for that new roof.
Absolutely.
Just like you
But-
would
but-
if you
but
had to buy it.
The issue that you have, and you brought it up, and that is, see, here, everything's done based on, and statutorily, it requires that you have to have a certain amount of equity in the home in order to get this loan.
20%.
20% equity. So the killer here is, let's say you take somebody in holiday, a senior citizen, 70, 75 years old, the possibility and probability of them having that home paid off is good. It means the home is paid off in full.
Right.
But her income is maybe $1,000 a month. Someone comes in and says, "Wow, Mrs. Smith, you've got all this equity. Let's get you a new roof, a new air conditioning, a solar system." Wow, it
So are
sounds
they
great.
trying to stack all those things up and sell them to seniors? Is that what you're
absolutely.
saying?
Absolutely. I could show you example after
Okay.
example. It is disgraceful. It's shameful what we're seeing out there. Not
Um,
by everyone, but by a few who are making
Right.
the whole system bad. And this is where the PACE providers need to step up and stop it.
So the other question I have too, and we'll answer this when we come back after the break, is are the cost of those items inflated? So for example, if you could get a new roof for $10,000 or $15,000, not talking about interest, but are they charging 20 and then tacking interest? We'll cover all that when we come
got some
back.
good stories for that.
Right
Absolutely.
after the break. We have so much to talk about. This is Tampa Home Talk. Stick around. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
Well, good morning. Welcome back to Tampa Home Talk. This is your co-host, Leo Cannyn, with Katrina Madewell, Mike Fasano, and Mike Fasano, because that's what his shirt says.
Tim Coet.
Tim Coet. So, yeah, this is...
Coet, right? Tim Coet?
Coet, yeah, you got it.
So I just wanted to take a moment to remind everyone about our off-air number, which is 813-377-2775.
And I've totally forgotten about the whole show.
That's 813-377-2775. It's very important if you want to contact any of us after the show, after the next hour of the show, where we're going to continue this conversation and
I'll
create some
tell
horror
you what,
stories.
we know how talk radio is, right? People are popping in and out of the car.
Of course.
That's just how it is. So if you want more information on this, for one, we're going to throw the whole thing on a podcast. But if you want to talk to me, you want to get connected to Mike, just call or text us at our off-air number. Just text PACE to 813-377-2775, 813-377-2775.
They can also call our customer advocate, Samantha, who's just an expert in this. She's become an expert, and just call the our tax collector call center.
Yep, 727-847-8165.
That was too fast.
727-847-8165. And Samantha's at extension 2781.
He speaks fast because he's a Patriots fan.
And we'll make sure...
It was way too
We'll make
fast.
sure we hang on to Samantha's information as well. And that's 727-847...
8165.
8165, and then what's her extension?
2781.
Perfect. We will hold on to that. So again, we'll continue giving out our off-air number, and then if you have some more questions about this, we'll answer what we can or get you connected to Samantha.
And Christian, just so you know, the customer advocate, Samantha, is not there to tell you to either to take it or not take the PACE loan. She is there to provide information and answer questions for you.
Perfect. So that's, it's interesting, and we're going to share some of the stories, but one of the points that you made over the break that we really need to talk about is this is a lien on your home,
That's
right?
correct.
I guess considered a UCC lien, perhaps. Yeah. So these UCC liens, they get recorded. It's just like a mortgage or any other lien that you would have on your home. So if you had a mortgage, for example, on your home and you went to sell it, that mortgage would need to be paid off.
Certainly.
That
And this-
PACE loan will have to be paid off. In fact, we had, and Tim recalls this, we had a gentleman that called Samantha, but he wasn't even from Pasco. He was from Bradenton. He called and said, "Hey, I just want to let you know, I sold my house." He had a PACE loan. He thought he was going to get all this this money when he sold the house. Found out that the new lender refused to pay the PACE loan, so it had to come out of his proceeds at closing. He got thousands of dollars less than what he expected because that PACE loan had to be paid off.
And they're not going to subordinate, which is where they let another or a new mortgage or a new person come in front of that. And there's none of the financing agencies that are going to allow this PACE loan to be on the home when you sell it, when a new buyer comes in.
That's correct.
So that means your only option would be to have a cash buyer.
Yep.
Because FHA, VA, conventional, which is Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, none of these guys are going to allow this PACE program and this loan, this lien that's on the property to stick or stay when that seller sells.
correct.
That's correct. Yep.
So with that being said, it's a 10 to 30 year term. Obviously 10 years would make sense, but can we share a couple of the stories, like whichever one, and you don't have to share any names, of course,
No.
but whatever's the most profound one that you remember when we talk
boy.
about the PACE program. You guys are looking like, I know who
So
that
we have
is.
several. We have one
But give me
gentleman.
the
I just
one
don't know
that
which
sticks
one.
out in
Gentleman
your
I don't
from
know
mind.
which one's
Zephyr
gonna
Hills.
pick.
Gentleman from
Oh, this is
Zephyr
a good one.
Hills.
Oh, yeah.
Who was sold 2 PACE loans by the same contractor.
2 PACE loans?
2 PACE loans.
Two.
That's correct.
Not toothpaste.
Is that possible? Apparently so.
Well,
If
the
it fits
PACE
in the
providers
equity.
are not. The PACE providers are not big fans of it. But what happened was the contractor was smart enough. And by the way, this contractor is not from Pasco. Contractor was smart enough to
Let's
do
say
it.
slick enough.
That's correct. To have both loans kind of pass in the night, so neither of the PACE providers knew of it. The contractor sold the gentleman, an air conditioner. But then he said,
Any idea what the AC cost?
Oh, it was way above and beyond what I called an air conditioner company and just said, give me an estimate of what this would have been. It was thousands of dollars less. There's a good ending to the story, though, because then he goes ahead and he sells the gentleman a roof.
And he's not a roofer.
And he's not a roofer, which he's not allowed to do. Can't do that. You have to be the contractor of what you're going to sell.
Licensed, yeah.
Right. So he sells him a roof. The issue, though, is he tells the second PACE provider that he's selling this guy an air conditioning. So both PACE providers think.
Yep, they both funded an AC unit.
Funded an AC
Oh,
unit.
yeah,
Wow.
right.
There's a big difference between an AC and a
Wow,
roof.
but you know
Oh,
what?
yes.
It is a big difference.
So
but
that tells
still,
me how much the AC costs.
That's correct. That's correct. So to try and quiet this guy down, he offers them, I'll put a free fence in for you, which was
yeah, it
absolutely
was
ridiculous. A new
silly.
fence.
Very silly.
But anyway, a friend of his calls me. I call every email that comes to me, by the way, I answer myself. So I called her back. She explained everything to me. I called the gentleman. Tim got on the case immediately. This was before we had the customer advocate. This is when things started to unravel for us to understand there's got some problems here. Well, in the end, thankfully, we were able to get, through Tim's good work, the one PACE loan taken away because now he wanted to refinance his house, the gentleman.
You got one wiped out?
Well, the guy wanted to refinance the house and pay everything off. Well, the lender, the new lender, saw 2 PACE loans for air conditioners. Well, they're not financing that.
Nope.
So Tim had to go back to the one of the PACE providers and change that to where they finally put it on the roof, right?
Yep.
But we were able to get the one because they messed up big time, the PACE provider. They swallowed one of the loans.
Yeah, they did. Well, the one that he sold as a roof, that's illegal.
Right.
And so Mr. Fasano was great, pretty much going to the contractor and saying, "Hey, this is going to get real ugly unless we get this fixed."
I think you
I
wanna
never
wipe
tell
this
people
out.
that it's going to get
But
ugly.
I think
Yeah.
he probably
They
got
get
the
the
gist.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, when the accounting official comes
I'm
up to you and
summarizing.
says to fix this problem,
He says, "Let's
you
make
did
this
something
right
illegal.
for
Yeah,
the homeowner."
you kind of just do it.
I will
So
tell you,
anyway,
though-
they swallowed one of the loans. The good thing is the guy
Nice.
was able to. He now can afford, even though it was too expensive to begin with, the one PACE loan, and everything is fine. But it's just so sad that had his friend not reached out to someone,
Who
Yeah.
knows where that would have been?
he would have lost his home because it is my belief that similar to what we had years ago with the mortgage crisis, you're going to have a PACE crisis because you're going to
Really?
yes.
You think
You're-
it's that extreme? There's that much
Yes,
going on.
Broward County is a perfect example
yeah, I
where
can see it.
they are
Especially when
selling.
you have all these, like, if realtors don't know about these extra things that need to be paid at closing, and they're not encompassing that in the sales price, you're going to have a
and
bunch.
remember, 2
Well,
years of unpaid taxes.
you're gonna have
That's all it takes.
where people are going to lose their home because when a tax certificate is sold on
Bingo.
a tax on a tax unpaid taxes, 2 years later that home can begin to be auctioned off. These are people who are not going to be able to pay those tax notices when they
Wow.
triple.
So, Mr. Fasano, this has already been an hour.
20
We're going to roll into the next hour. Stick around with us right after the 9 o'clock hour. Our off-air number is 813-377-2775, 813-377-2775. And I know those of you are listening, Pat's going to give our on-air number for questions. We'll be back in about 6 minutes or so. Stick around.